Before we start, YouTube has demonetized China Insider and we're moving to 2 new channels, David Zhang 360 and David on China. Just search each on YouTube with no space. Link will also be in the description. What you're seeing right now are unpaid workers hugging the legs of the boss to get their pay, or crying because they refuse to pay you while they laugh. And this man is being called Angry Brother because he's so mad that his face turned red as he tries to get his paycheck. Every 2 weeks or so, or once in a month, we know that a magic number appears in your bank account. It makes you happy because the sweet green number is what gets you going to be able to spend money for the next month, and in exchange, obviously, for the time that you put in at your workplace. This salary to time exchange, or salary to energy, whatever the way you want to call it, at this point, to us, is nothing more than a routine, especially if you've gotten a stable job. It's perhaps something that has become such a common thing, where maybe the excitement doesn't strike as much as when you got your first paycheck when you were 14, doing dishwashing or frying chicken or something. But what if I told you that this excitement can still happen in China? And supposedly, the second largest economy in the world, getting paid on time is still an issue. This happens a lot with migrant workers, with construction workers, with people who are in the so-called lower income brackets. In fact, the prevalence of being unpaid is such a real phenomenon, it happens every single year. This is China's unpaid wages crisis. Each year around late January or starting early February, tens of millions of people travel across China from urban centers back home to the countryside for the Chinese New Year. They board older trains, not the high-speed rails, which are rather expensive for construction workers or migrant workers. Some tickets can cost up to 1,000 yuan to get to where they want to go. So rather, they like to stick with the old stuff. Some people would stand for 15 plus hours on the train as they want to save every bit of their earning so that they can bring it home for their kids, for their parents, for Chinese New Year. High-speed trains cost a lot. And for them, the price of a train ticket could be a week worth of groceries or a new fresh set of coat or a pair of shoes, whatever they want to buy for their kids or parents. But of course, the excitement or the best part of it is that they get to go home and they bring some hard-earned cash with them. Others, not so lucky. They haven't been paid for their time and their effort. And they're spending the days before Chinese New Year trying to get their pay, their entitled pay that they worked for. And it gets increasingly difficult because for some of these workplaces, getting paid on time is difficult because the employers don't have money either. Plus, there isn't really this government accountability system or part to speak of. Guess why? Well, because China made up this case of malicious wage claims, meaning that they can now claim that these workers who are trying to get their money because they worked for it come with ill intentions to simply scam employers of money. Under this excuse, now there's even more opportunities to delay payment. And all these employers can just say that, well, look, they're maliciously trying to claim money that's not theirs, even though this is their entitled pay, because while they worked for it, this is now a malicious claim. On February 9th, at the Yunjin Wonton store in Changsha City, an employee who was reportedly owed wages completely broke down emotionally and started flipping over all the tables and chairs and benches inside the store. And he kept shouting, "Scammers, give my money back." And here, workers who haven't been paid sit in front of the office building and demand that they're paid. Ironically, the giant grand tablet in the back reads, "Serving the people." Now, usually the tactics when you go try to talk with HR or the accounting department is they get you to wait in the lobby for hours, right? They want you to wait there, they wouldn't come see you, and say it's time to finish work or the day is done, they tell you to come back the next day. And here is a letter that states this particular company, an electronics factory, owed this worker 29,000 yuan, and it was later compensated by the local Bureau of Human Resources. Now, these aren't smaller amounts like, say, 200, 300. Even then, obviously, being owed that much money, it should still be a problem. But we're talking about a much bigger sum, right? And you see some people resort to worshiping the god of fortune in their journey to get paid. Others have gathered to protest the situation if it gets bigger. And a lot of these protests over wages are actually because of two scenarios. I kind of touched on it. The first one is, well, the employer or the contractor or factory owners, whoever they're dealing with, they don't have the money. They could have ran off with the money. They could have, one day it's still working, the next day they simply ran away, left people to dry. Like in this video here, in the kindergarten case, it was just operating normally and then suddenly one day it was shut down and the owners ran with the money. Now the second case is if you work for a state-owned construction bureau, mainly this is, again, for a lot of these construction workers or factory workers, that is because the money was never there. For this type of scenario, you wouldn't imagine that they have money to put aside for paying the workers, but what they do is graft and bribery and corruption is it's the main mission, right? The main mission isn't to pay your employees, but the corrupt officials, they will pocket the money right away, and they make fake accounting books so that on paper it looks legit. It covers the expense cost for employee payments, and then obviously they don't have the money. And so the reason why this is more apparent at the end of the year, aka the Chinese New Year for them, it's because, well, most workplaces will shut down for a week or two, and you probably imagine that it's even harder for them to get it starting the next year for them, right? So I think at the end of the day, this is an issue that seemingly is so distant, not just from us, but even from middle-class people in China, the people that make a decent living in, say, Shanghai or Beijing. But you got to remember, China's not a country that's made up of just rich people. So you would think of the equivalent to, say, the steel manufacturing workers or the automobile workers in working for Tesla or Ford, or anything that basically requires not sitting at the office, contributing 40 hours to 60 hours in a week, and say that their employer says, well, I can't pay you because I don't have the money. That's usually going to end up in the headlines of the news on the day, but it doesn't happen in China. And people seem to have been so used to this idea of wage claims or petitioning to get paid that they think this is just an yearly occurrence now. And they don't really see it as a problem anymore, which I think, in my opinion, is quite twisted, right? You're a communist socialist country and you can't even guarantee the basic workers' right of being entitled to payment or a fair share, as they say. So yeah, let me know your thoughts about this video. I have some more examples to show you here. So this video is a worker who was protesting on the rooftop. He fell by accident, and the security and onlookers you see here, they just simply look around, ignoring him. This coldness, the lack of caring nature, this true cold-blooded society, this is no coincidence. I'll specifically talk about it in a separate video on this, but right now I just think that a lot of times people realize that they don't have time to care about other people. You only do so because you feel like personally that you at least have the pacing to, if something happened around you, you would slow down and you would do your help, say if somebody needed it was in a medical emergency. But you see here that they simply don't care. So stay tuned for that episode. But these workers who are unpaid, what they're doing essentially is they have to resort to almost extreme measures, sounding the alarm, like threatening to jump from a building in order to gain attention. Usually it's kind of like the extreme case of, if you don't give it to me right now, I'm literally going to jump. Because guess what? For a lot of us, they're like, you should value your life. You can still make more money. For them at the moment, that's literally the amount of money that they need to go home. And if you're not getting it, sometimes that's worth threatening your life over. So that's why they do it. But obviously you see in some cases, they just simply don't care. And I think that's a very dark but interesting reality in China. So let me know your thoughts in the comments again about this whole unpaid wage thing. Let me know if you have any stories that you might have heard, and let me know your thoughts again. Please also subscribe to our new channel, David Zhang 360 and David on China. Again, the links will be in the description, or you can just search on YouTube in the search bar, David on China and David Zhang 360 with no space. All right, thank you so much for watching this episode, and we'll see you next time.